Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Supply and Demand, another episode of Tuesday Talk. I'm Kyle Sipkens. I'm guest hosting today. We want to welcome you here. We have two awesome panelists today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We do want to mention that if you do have any questions throughout the call, feel free to either raise your hand in the window, or you can type it in the chat as well. That's absolutely fine. And we are recording this today as well. It will be posted later. And we hope that you will come with your questions as well. I know I have a lot of questions because we have two people who really do the groundwork for festivals and events and really lay the blueprint for great events to happen. So we'll get to that. But again, thank you and welcome. So I'm just going to introduce our panelists today. So first we have Joanna Bieda. That's perfect. I was practicing that before the call. So Joanna is the Director of Marketing and Communications at Modu-Loc Fence Rentals. Since joining Modu-Loc in 2014, Joanna has become heavily involved in the development of the company's training and employee engagement programs. As a member of Modu-Loc's response team, she has collaborated on the creation of Modu-Loc's COVID-19 response and action plan to ensure its organizational readiness throughout the pandemic. So Joanna, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're glad to have you here. And we also have Andrew Zimbel. Yeah, I got it. All right. Andrew is the Director of Sales and Marketing for Higgins Event Rentals, a Toronto supplier of event solutions for over 35 years. While his goal is to grow sales and revenue at Higgins Event Rentals, his method is to assist customers to grow their business, thus creating more demand for the services at Higgins Event Rentals. Andrew, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
So glad to have you both here. So I want to start, Joanna, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to ask you to just kind of tell us a little bit about your company and your business leading up to 2019, how it kind of lives in normal times. So we'll start there.
In the before times.
Before times.
The before times. Yeah, so Modu-Loc Fence Rentals, as the name implies, is a temporary fence supplier. We actually work mainly with construction and events. Events are definitely part of our DNA and have been really core to our business since really the outset. And we've been around since 1996. So we're actually celebrating our 25th year anniversary this year. Certainly wish it wasn't taking place during a pandemic. We had some big things planned to celebrate, but like everybody on this call, we've pivoted and we've adapted, and that's fine. So within Ontario, in a normal year, we can support as many as 800 events each and every year in Ontario. We really do consider ourselves to be the experts in the event space when it comes to temporary fencing.
That's incredible. And that's, I think a lot of people on the call had milestones that they were waiting for. I know there were some fairs that were like maybe ready to celebrate 100 years.
Right.
And Andrew, we're going to jump over to you as well before we get to the after times. If you can tell as well, share the story of your business leading up to 2019 and how it normally operates.
Well, Higgins Event Rentals is a family business started by the Higgins brothers. Well, Dennis Higgins was the father, who I was a customer of in 1982. He answered the phone when I called looking for a rental company. And as a caterer, I was with Higgins for 27 years. So we've been in business 35 years. We do everything from weddings, corporate events, and festivals are now one of our specialties. We do festivals like Toronto Outdoor Art Fair. We do hundreds of them. So, and we work together with the festivals to help their festival grow by specializing, having special people who work with the festivals. Michelle, who's on the call here, is one of our key members. She's a board member of the Canadian Rental Association and FEO. And anyway, we love working with festivals.
Fantastic. So between the fencing side and the tent side, you really do create, when a festival pops up, it's a city within a city that goes up seemingly overnight. And the two of you really are integral in that and creating that infrastructure.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one of the things, one of the things that we do is, go ahead, Joanna.
No, go ahead.
So one of the things we do is we actually have crews that go in and actually set, like literally overnight. We'll go in at like 6 o'clock at night and work overnight setting everything up so it's ready first thing in the morning. Or when we have festivals like street closures, you know, the street will close at 6 o'clock and we'll be setting up and have everything ready to open by 7 or 8 o'clock that night. So and a lot of that's thanks to Joanna's team, because to set things up, you need to have a division between public space and private space, or the festival space. And so setting the fencing up is amazing. And we work very closely with Joanna's team.
We do, yeah. Andrew hit the nail right on the head. I was just going to say that we're often, you know, the first ones on site or among the first ones on site. And we do have such a great relationship with Higgins. So appreciative for that.
Fantastic. So we've kind of laid the groundwork of, you know, when things were operating well in the normal times, the before times, you know, how you were functioning normally and functioning well as a company and in the industry. And then like everyone else, 2020 hit. And like I was personally ready to get t-shirts made that were going to say 2020 best year ever. And I think a lot of people were right. I'm glad I didn't invest in those. So Joanna, we'll go back over to you. And can you tell us what kind of happened as soon as 2020 hit?
Sure. I might have worn one of those t-shirts ironically.
Well, you know what? Maybe I'll still do it, like kind of a retro throwback.
Not too late. Yeah, I mean, we were sort of talking about this yesterday. We did, of course, lose all of our event business practically overnight, is the way that it felt. We were very, very fortunate to have the construction business to rely on to get us through the pandemic. Because, you know, construction was considered to be essential in a lot of areas. So that really kept us going. And then the other interesting thing that happened was that we started to find new applications for our fence that were directly related to the pandemic. So whether using fence for, you know, as a social distancing measure to create queues, particularly, you know, when non-essential retail stores had to close, and shift to sort of a curbside pickup model. So there was use for fence there. As I said, a ton of retail queues that we did. We were setting up pandemic hospitals as well. And I know that, you know, tents were also a big component in setting up those sort of overflow areas for hospitals that were just inundated with COVID-19 cases. You know, it was a little bit unpopular, but we were also called upon by, municipalities to close off common outdoor areas, you know, playgrounds, skate parks, things like that. So that was definitely a little bit polarizing, maybe a little bit controversial, but we certainly stand behind that being the right thing to do at the time. You know, definitely trying to limit again that social contact and limit the spread of COVID-19.
Right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. And so, I mean, luckily, at least the inventory you had, you were able to shift slightly, whereas normally some of your inventory would be going to festivals and events. There was another call for it. You were able to utilize it somewhere.
Absolutely, yes. And I mean, when we're talking about, you know, the crowd control type barriers, pedestrian barricades, things like that normally would be deployed on event sites. Thankfully, those were the types of fencing that were really needed for social distancing measures, not so much for the, those public outdoor spaces that needed to be a higher fence for that added security. But certainly retailers were snapping up all of that crowd control inventory.
Yeah, because I mean, they had to find a whole new way to operate. Then that's, yeah. Which, I mean, in some ways it's a barrier, and in other ways it's a great way of providing directionality where it's needed. Or at least
that's it. Yeah, you're really just trying to sort of funnel that pedestrian traffic, avoid crowding at entrances to stores. I mean, it's very similar to the concept of queuing for events, and we're certainly seeing the importance of that, especially now that there are, you know, increased screening. requirements, maybe metering of attendees. So certainly those queuing areas are so important to prevent that crowding. But that was something that the retail stores had to learn very quickly, something that they hadn't had to deal with previously.
Oh, that's great. And I will apologize if you hear any hammering going on. I do live in an apartment building, and unfortunately that's my home studio. There's ongoing construction just as part of living in Toronto.
It is
But that's great. Thank you. And Andrew, we're going to jump over to you as well. To also, I know that your company was hit as well as anyone else's. If you can tell us kind of what happened when 2020 hit.
So when 2020 hit, we were going into literally the best year we would ever had, like by far. We had more weddings booked. We had more festivals booked. We were, things were looking very rosy. I remember we got the first hint of problems when I was presenting at the restaurant show, and just before going on and doing a presentation there, I got a text that said Pepsi-Cola canceled their event at the Great Hall because of COVID, and it was like, what? And that was the start. And then we went down to Las Vegas to the caterers show, and caterers started standing up saying, I just lost half of my business for the year. And then the NBA canceled. And then we flew home, and we found that almost all of our events all of our events for the year canceled. Some postponed. So what we had to do is we had to look and see, what did we really do? I mean, we thought we, provided tents and tables and chairs and that sort of thing, but that was not really what we did. That was sort of the product of what we did. What we did is we were a logistics company. We are a company that is designed to take very detailed orders to very detailed to location. So we move things. We had our resource were our people, our planning skills, and our ability to think quickly, provide a detailed, customized service, and do it quickly. So we did a ton of, I don't like the word anymore, pivoting. It always reminds me of an episode of Friends. But
pivot.
Yeah, but we were shouting that a lot in the year. But we did things like we started an online flower garden center because we heard garden centers weren't going to be allowed to open and greenhouses were suffering. So my colleague Laura Doby had the idea, and we greenlit it, and we had a web store up and running in 5 days, and we had our first order out the door in 10 days. We started doing deliveries for different companies, everything from IKEA to Ryerson. We picked up all the desk chairs at Ryerson and moved them to the professors' houses. We started a cleaning business, a sanitization service. So we, started doing fogging. We got involved in the film industry doing COVID control. So when the film started up again, there was a demand for people to be on site to do cleaning and fogging and so on. So we did that. And now that's morphed into, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, but that's morphed into, we help festivals with their screening process coming in. We had a couple of festivals. The first one was Southside Shuffle, who asked us, if we would do the screening and the cleaning on the way. Well, they first asked us to do the cleaning, and we said, sure. And then they said, could you do the screening as well? And because our main resource is our people, we were able to set it up. And because we're used to managing flow, like we're used to managing the process, and I must say my colleague, Paul Desai, who's our director of operations, is a master at this. He set up a system so people could get in and out of the Southside Shuffle fast and easy, and with all their forms filled in. And it was a great success. So we're doing that as well too now. So I guess I rambled on a bit, but there you go.
No, that's okay. There was great information in there. I don't think it got to the point of rambling, but I think you hit on some interesting things. And yeah, I don't like the P word as much as anyone else. We've all heard it far too much. But I think an interesting thing that happened during COVID is that a lot of businesses had to really ask, just like you said, what is it that we do, getting to the core of it. And you realize that you are a logistics company, you are a flow company, you are, and that you're really people powered. And that was a thing that you could bring. And yeah, it's just like you said, whether it's film and television, which I've been on a lot of film sets during COVID. And that was the reason why our industry was able to keep going, was because we had such strict protocols and a great way of working safely with things like sanitation and check-ins. And that's a very important thing now. I think that any festival organizers on the call will want to pay attention to is managing that flow. And that's also what Joanna, what your company does as well, is really focusing on that flow. So it's great to hear how each company adjusted, but I also want to get into what was it like to operate during this time? What were the challenges that your business hit and had to overcome in order to get to that point where you were doing what it was that you were doing to get through the pandemic? And Joanna, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you were just talking about the sanitization, Andrew. That was definitely something we had to take a closer look at as a supplier to the construction industry. It's so easy to think about health and safety and really focus in on addressing the physical risks, like that accident prevention, accident mitigation, that sort of thing. But really recognizing the role that hygiene plays in keeping people safe and ensuring their well-being. That was something that, like a lot of organizations, we had to focus a lot more on last year. We really did also have to think about how we reached our customers. And Andrew, to your point about sort of really re-examining the purpose of your organization, we knew we had to double down on the customer service element, especially early on in the pandemic. There was so much uncertainty, right? We all went through it. We didn't know how necessarily this was going to impact our business, the scale of that impact. So really, we took this approach of win every job and just deliver the best possible customer service, ensure that our customers are, as happy as they can be, all of their needs are addressed, to really just ensure that we continued to see that revenue coming in, right? We employ a lot of people. We wanted to avoid, having to reach a point where we're talking about layoffs. And I'm so pleased to say that we were largely able to do that. Again, we were very fortunate to, we didn't experience the kind of loss that a lot of event suppliers and of course our event clients did. But there was, we still dealt with that uncertainty like everybody else. And then really, I think the supply chain, we haven't escaped the impact of, the global supply chain issues that I think a lot of organizations have been experiencing. That became a challenge, especially as demand really started to outpace the inventory that we had. So we really had to take a close look at the way that we, where we manufacture our fence, the way that we manufacture it, the way that we source our inventory. And we're still sort of working through that, to be perfectly honest. Haven't addressed all of those issues. We are still waiting on fence. We're still experiencing some shortages of inventory. But that was something that we were thankfully partly able to offset just through like sheer innovation. We got creative. I think that's a concept that a lot of people on this call will likely be able to relate to. Like, you just had to sort of get creative, be a little bit flexible. So we had what we call pickup panels because they fit into the back of a pickup truck. They were really designed for our home builder clients, or smaller home builders, like custom home builders who they want to own their own fence. They want to be responsible for, moving it from site to site and setting it up themselves. So it's a 6-foot high fence panel that's only about 4 feet wide. We actually had employees last year design a conversion kit to allow us to use those fence panels horizontally, like on their side, to create more of a crowd control height fence, like pedestrian height fence. So they're 6 feet wide by 4 feet high. We actually, we sold a whole bunch to Blue Mountain Village, was one client that took a whole bunch. Last time I was up there a couple of weekends ago, I saw them everywhere. So they're using them, for patios or, VIP areas, small event areas. So that was something that we did that allowed us to take a look at, existing inventory we had that maybe wasn't as in demand, because we were getting all of these requests from retail stores and for those, those queues and the social distancing measures needing more of like a 4-foot height fence. We were able to take that existing inventory and leverage it in a new way.
That's great. And yeah, Blue Mountain is an excellent example of like really how they implemented directionality to create safety, which is fantastic. And there's a couple of things you hit on in there that I want to circle back to. But before that, Andrew, I want to give you the same opportunity as well to kind of talk about the challenges and that you had to overcome as a company. You're a people-powered company. Your inventory was being used in a new way, and you kind of had to refocus. And I'm sure some of your inventory wasn't being utilized as well. So if
most of our inventory wasn't being used. Our business dropped like 97%. It really dropped. But then we came up with other ideas, like we invested in more hand sinks. So we had a lot of hand sinks out on especially grocery stores, having hand sinks on site. We did use our people. Having our people come in, especially before vaccines, it was a little nerve-wracking, and it was hard on the drivers and getting people to commit to coming in. I mean, we have a dedicated crew, so we had a good people coming in, so that was very good. Our communication worked really well. Actually, we use Zoom for our management meetings and to brainstorm ideas. So we all worked from home for quite a while, and that I thought worked very well. The challenges. One of the challenges is how to keep motivated, how to keep the team thinking that there's something brighter days coming ahead. And I found our Zoom meetings and our little things like doing the flower store was not a great moneymaker, but it was a great team builder. We were all there. We got together. We got it done. We delivered orders, and it felt good to do something. And I think that was really, I don't know if you can all remember back to May of 2020, but it was not the most brilliant time. But to do something and to be successful and to help people out, it was really a wonderful experience for us. And then when we started doing the film work, that was really, that was another thing that kept our team motivated, gave them something interesting to do. It was a little bit different, and I think that was really good. And Joanna, I love the idea of those 4-foot fence panels. We have to talk about that later, because I'm always thinking of different things to do.
I'm sure there's many people taking notes right now, going, I need to ask about this, need to ask about that later.
Yeah.
But that's I do. There's lots more that I'd like to cover. I do want to remind anyone that as a question comes up, if you're on the call, feel free to either raise your hand or type it in the chat window, because I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit to kind of now where we're at now and what's happening going forward as some events are coming back. I want to find out where your company's at in terms of readiness. If if a festival comes up and says, we're planning this for a winter event or for a summer event, where you're at right now in terms of readiness. So Joanna, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. As I
question.
It is. It's sort of hard to. I'm kind of almost astonished at how quickly it feels like it's ramping back up for us. We've had a lot of interest recently from events, which is great. Like we love working events. Our guys love working events because they're different. They're a little bit more challenging. There's more, sort of thought that goes into it, more planning. So it's very exciting for us to be getting back to this. As I mentioned, inventory has proved to be a bit of a challenge. We're still as I said, we're still waiting on some fence to come in. We are trying to sort of, we're exploring other options as far as manufacturing new fence. So we are looking at, local manufacturers as well. And it is sort of steadily trickling in, and steadily sort of also trickling back in from some of those sort of pandemic applications that I had spoken about earlier. That being said, I still, I definitely encourage any event organizer who is in need of fence to reach out as early as possible to secure that. Staffing has also been a bit of a challenge. I think other event suppliers are dealing with the same problem. Maybe even some of our event clients are dealing with that problem. But certainly, it's been tough to attract new talent. I don't know if Andrew sort of touched on this. The mental health effects of the pandemic were massive. That can't be ignored. So I don't know if there might be some people who are just sort of not ready to return to work, and especially in this sort of capacity where we're asking, like Higgins and their drivers, we're asking our guys to go out into the field, out into the public. So they're not able to work remotely. They don't have that option, right? It's been a bit tough for sure. We do have a great core team, or great core group of crews. But we do normally, our numbers swell in the summertime. We hire a lot of seasonal staff to help support primarily on the events side, right? So that's where it kind of remains to be seen how that's going to work out next year. Certainly in the last few months, it's been a bit of a challenge, but, I think we're ready. I think it just kind of is going to mean, a bit of extra planning, more advanced planning, everybody being as organized as possible, just to ensure that we can meet those demands.
Well, I think that's an important thing to remember as well, that not everyone experienced the pandemic in the same way. Absolutely. And mental health, especially, typically 1 in 5 people experience mental health challenges in their lifetime. During COVID, it was more like 75% that we know of, which was astronomical. And working through that is an extreme challenge. And I think the ripple effects of that are going to be like everything else, like supply chain. It's going to take time. And so I do want to give you a chance, and Andrew, I'm gonna ask you to comment on it as well in a moment. But I do want to ask, was there anything that your company was doing specifically for your staff or to help you function as a company through that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, aside from the, we had the COVID-19 response and action plan to address some of the safety concerns, right? We wanted people to feel physically safe coming to work, whether they could work remotely or not. But beyond that, definitely the psychological safety was so important. And there were a couple of things that we did. So we actually have an annual employee effectiveness survey that we conduct internally. So that was very, very helpful in sort of understanding our employees' concerns, the way that they were feeling. I'm so happy to share that largely our employees felt like we were supporting them very, very well through the pandemic. But we've done a few things like, we recently had a mental wellness day here at Modu-Loc. We just gave every last employee a paid day off on a Friday to give them a long weekend and allow them to just sort of take some time for self-care, whatever that looks like, to you or to our employees. Take some time for self-care. We did also, we've had keynote speakers in. We hosted them virtually to give presentations about mental health, about recognizing some of the signs of, whether it's depression or anxiety, how to go about dealing with those, sharing very, very sort of simple, actionable steps that people can take just to help sort of manage some of that. But I think a lot of it really just comes down to listening, like having those employee feedback channels in place. We have regional steering committees that meet every other month to discuss, concerns, issues, ideas, suggestions. So they were instrumental in helping us to understand how this pandemic was affecting our employees. Again, both in terms of their physical safety and their psychological safety. And that really allowed us to make small changes quickly to address those concerns.
That's fantastic. And Andrew, I'm sorry to jump quickly, but we're going to jump back a little bit. I want to give you an opportunity as well to talk about the readiness that Higgins is to get back into festivals. Like you mentioned that you've kind of shifted and had to get sinks and sanitation ready. You have people working in film and television. So if a festival comes to you, how ready is Higgins to?
So it turns out we're very ready. I mean, we have a huge group of a team that we had actually deployed on another operation that just suddenly, when festivals, they were working at a vaccine center. So when the vaccine center started gearing down, festivals started gearing up. So we were able to get back into the full swing of things really quickly, because we kept our employees working. All of our drivers were working through the pandemic, doing different things, but we were able to start up right away. Because the things opened up really quickly with festivals and for weddings and that sort of thing, we got hit really hard and really fast. But we were able to seamlessly do 3 or 4 festivals in the last 5 weeks, and they all went off like clockwork. It went really well. So we have the people here, and our people, once again, our people are what makes it work so well. And like Michelle Nicole, who's our festival and event specialist, many of you know her here. She's just a master at coordinating different people doing different things, and all of our team here. And that's actually one of the interesting things is our team has become closer together because of the Zoom meetings, and because of this, we're all we used to specialize more, and now we have all we're all working. Like, we used to have one person who specialized in tents, and now our whole team is trained in working in tents, and that's really quite amazing. And that's one of the things I meant to mention earlier, is that we had a lot of tents go out for long-term rentals that we didn't think of before. Not vaccine centers, but a lot of restaurants, a lot of companies wanting to have a place for people to eat outside, wanting to have a place for people to wait. So you get long-term tent rentals, which was very good for our business when everything was quiet. Now that festivals and everything start up again, there is a very extreme shortage of tents, and it's something that you really need to focus on if you're, if you're planning a festival. You need to really think about, booking your tenting very early. And the other thing that we have found, it's actually a benefit to us, and maybe to and the festivals may want to look at this too, use this as a way, and I'm thinking mainly of sponsors, but we've had to say to people, your event is booked when we get a deposit. It's not booked, when we give you a quote, that's not a booking. It's booked when we get a deposit. And many of our suppliers have said that to us as well. So basically what that means is that it goes downstream. So for festivals, you say to your sponsors, we need to get this, your sponsorship in place much earlier and actually get the money in the bank, which is better for you as well, because it gives you a close, which is a good thing.
Yeah, which I'm sure is a challenge that we're all kind of figuring out. And but you touched on an important point, is what festival organizers need to know when planning for this time. Like, in terms of when they're working with you, they may normally kind of copy and paste their site plan. They might normally have a way of doing it and a timeline that may be shifted, that they may be kind of moving forward tentatively. Things are looking good with things opening up in Ontario. So I want to give each of you the chance as well to talk about what is it specifically from your side that those festival organizers need to know moving forward in the winter or into 2022. Joanna, we'll start with you.
I mean, Andrew hit the nail right on the head as far as your event, your order is not booked until a deposit is received. That's really, there again, going back to that idea of uncertainty, and there has been a lot of uncertainty, and there were a lot of, jobs canceled last year. And although we're seeing a lot less of that now as things are starting to reopen, that demand is definitely astonishingly high. I don't know, Andrew, if you've seen this so much in the tent space, but I know in the fencing space, we've seen other suppliers, smaller competitors of ours get out of the game altogether. So either some of them have decided, we're not supporting events anymore. We just simply don't have the bandwidth. Some of them have sold their fence business altogether. So that's really kind of exacerbating the shortages that we're already seeing. Mm-hmm. There's going to be limited choice when it comes to suppliers for temporary fencing. At least that's the way it's shaping up to be. So definitely, again, getting orders in as early as possible. I know our sales team is planning to start reaching out to our event clients probably in February to start sort of confirming orders. But, being proactive about it, again, deposits definitely are going to be important as well. And then, it pains me to say this because I know how events have been affected, of course, and I know that there's been struggle. But in our industry, we're definitely seeing prices increase. We're seeing it across the board. Unfortunately, steel prices are at an all-time high. The tight labor market has really driven up the cost of labor as well. So just kind of being prepared for that, potential little shock. And again, reaching out as early as possible to ensure that you do understand what those costs are going to be and can properly budget for them.
And that's absolutely one of the reasons for this series is to start the conversation early, because things may have changed, things like pricing, things like the supply chain, that it seems to be something that's a recurring theme. And Andrew, Joanna did a lovely job of volleying it up. So I want to continue that for you as well.
And it's true. I mean, first of all, the supply chain is very, as a real challenge. Getting product, like a lot of our tents, our pop-up tents are bought in China, and a container from China, if you can get one, has gone from $2,000 to $20,000 just for the container, never mind what's in it. So, and some things we'd like to buy local if we can, but there's not a lot of pop-up tents manufacturers in Ontario at the moment. But, so things like that you have to be aware of. I was the co-chair of Toronto Taste when it first started, and I had to find a sponsor. And one of the things that when I did that, we went out looking for a sponsor, and we had to be prepared to say yes. And that was the one thing when somebody said yes, we weren't prepared for. So I think one of the things with sponsorship is that you may need to start looking sooner rather than later. I think you need to think about it. Think about your festivals. I'm not telling you how to run a festival, but I think you need to say to yourself, we're going to need to give a deposit in February to confirm our fence so we have it in June or whatever. So we need to have a sponsor in place by the beginning of January, right? So you need to start planning it and going out and getting it right now. So that's one of the things. Tenting is something very important. Like there's a very limited supply right now, both of product because of the extra use of tents. Like restaurants almost never had tents on their patio, and now they almost all do. So you really need to think well ahead if you're planning an outdoor tented event. And the other thing you need to think about is weather. What are your weather plans? What is your insurance? Are you budgeting enough for insurance? Because and it could be event cancellation insurance. If you can get it, that would be a brilliant thing. I heard the Shaw Festival actually bought a policy, and everybody was shocked that they did, a cancellation a policy in case of pandemic. And that really served them well. But if you can get something like that, it would be well worth doing.
The Shaw Festival was unique that they actually, because of their insurance, they were able to keep their people working. As far as I know, before there was a rent subsidy or a wage subsidy, they were able to basically keep their people employed because they had that policy in place. I don't know if anyone still offers that policy. I hope they do.
Yeah.
It would be very helpful right now. I do want to jump. There's a question in the chat here from Candace. She says, moving forward, if planners book with you very early and deposits are paid, what happened if that event is canceled or downsized or date moved? How do you handle those? As event planners, we struggle with moving dates multiple times and having the same products booked for each moving date or event. So Joanna, we'll go to you first, and we'll bounce back to Andrew as well to give you a chance to answer that. So Joanna, over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely don't want to scare anybody away and make it seem like there's no flexibility to be had. It's really about, having those deposits paid and making sure that your order is booked ensures that we, like Andrew mentioned, we're holding the fence for your event. It guarantees that we will have the inventory to service your event. So as far as, shifting requirements, whether it's quantities, whether it's dates, we'll absolutely work with you on that. Cancellation, that as well, again, we've been flexible. We understand the impact that this pandemic has had, and we want to continue to work with our event clients and maintain those good relationships that have taken, in some cases, decades to build. So again, I definitely don't want to scare anybody off. It's just a matter of ensuring that inventory is being held for you. Like Andrew mentioned, with the tents and restaurants, we've definitely had a similar experience with actually restaurants as well, with fencing for patios and expanding patios out into sidewalks and streets. So there is a lot of this demand that we hadn't previously experienced. And it sort of more overlaps with our event business, right? We have construction inventory. Those are the fence panels that we know don't look nice enough to satisfy our event clients. But restaurants, retailers, they're kind of really buying for the same inventory that we would typically reserve for events. So it's really just about making sure that we're holding that for you and securing it for you.
Right. And Andrew, over to you as well. Same question.
And we're the same way. We've had to redo our terms and conditions. We do have a policy which is on our website. Basically, when you make a commitment to us, a portion of it is a commitment. And the reason, and another portion can be moved or refunded or however. And the reason we do that is not because we want to make money off to not doing something, but because our products are limited resource. Like, we have a certain number of glasses, a certain number of pop-up tents, a certain number of big tents. So if we say yes to you and put it and reserve it, and then somebody else asks for it, we'll say no to them. And, so there's the opportunity cost is what you're paying for. It's like insurance, a deposit. So you're paying for something so that you have it when you want it. We have been as flexible as we possibly can with all of our products, and if we can move something, we do, and we do. If we have to reduce it, we will. But bottom line is that it doesn't help anybody if the event suppliers are no longer in business, right? So you need to balance everything out. So customers need to realize that the end customer need to realize that when you're booking an event on a specific day, you're taking that inventory for that day. And once the day is passed, it doesn't come back, right? So.
And there was a conversation early on in the pandemic where that was, I think, one thing that, event planners wanted to be mindful of is deposits. And, but for you, it's really about the opportunity to continue your business. And it sounds like for both of you, you've established long-term partnerships with the festivals that you work with. Yes. Andrew, can you tell me a little bit about the We Care idea that you have? So
when our business started, it was very much a family business. And Dennis and Peggy, husband and wife, really cared about every single product. So we've carried that thought process through for our whole business. So our team, they look and they care. An example for we were on site for the Southside Shuffle, and they had set up the chairs for a presentation, and it started to rain. So even though we were on site to do sanitization, they needed to move all their chairs under a tent because it started to rain. And so Paul Visaya, our director of operations, saw it and snapped his fingers and told his team, help them right away. So he had like 10 people moving chairs right away, because we care about the whole event. It's not only we care about our products, which we do, but we care about the success of your event. We want your event to be successful, because in the end, a successful event happens again. And if we can make an important contribution to the success of that event, then we're there next year because you're there next year. So one of the things that we do, for example, for the Toronto Outdoor Art Exhibit, is we handle all of the vendor rental orders. So like we set up a rental list, and there's a form and people fill it out, and we take care of it. So we get all the orders. So the festival doesn't need to take the orders. We take the orders, and then we collate it, and we know and we deliver it to each section and each person. That's 250 vendors for that event usually, I think, something like that. So it's a big plus. It's also an opportunity for festivals on here, is that the price established for our products is based on what you want to charge. So the festivals can offset some of their other costs by charging a little bit more, so that we would funnel the revenue into the festival. So it can be a moneymaker for you as well.
Well, and I think an important part that you hit on there, Andrew, is that, working with experienced suppliers is actually helping, it's not just that they're there to provide that function, that they are there for that specific purpose. They're really invested in being a fixer, that they are there to make your festival run well, whatever that is. I don't think that's any different from a number of businesses. Like Joanna, I wonder if you can speak to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if I can say it better than Andrew did, but definitely we're invested in our clients' success. We really just want to deliver peace of mind. And I think anybody on this call who's worked with us before really understands the lengths that our crews will go to. We have a few core guys that everybody in the industry knows. There are go-to guys who are always they're on every event site, because they really, really understand what is required for everything to run smoothly. And they're the ones, it's not our operations managers, it's not our dispatchers, it's not our sales team. It is our fence guys who are there face to face with our clients, plotting out the configuration of the fence. They're making recommendations with respect to like crowd control and ingress and egress and all of those things. They really, really understand what's involved. And in many cases, they've been working in these same events for years and years and years. And those clients who we have those sort of lasting relationships with know that they can really depend on those guys to get the job done and really meet all of their requirements. So it is really, of course, it's crucial to us as well. One of our core values is excellent, reliable service, and it is something that we really, really strive for.
Absolutely. And Debbie says that Higgins does that for our trade show as well, and it lifts a huge burden off me. It works, and I trust that it will be done. Modu-Loc crew has always been there to help me at the conference, even though we did not need any fencing. This duo team is a dream team. And Debbie actually set up something perfectly as well too, is maybe you can talk a little bit about the partnership of how both your companies work together as well. As we mentioned early on, you really lay the groundwork for a festival, not just in its planning stage, but from start to finish, even while it's operating. So how does the partnership that you two offer, how does that impact festivals? If you can talk a bit about that, Joanna, we'll start with you.
Actually, I was going to say, Andrew you had a good example yesterday when we were chatting, which was the art show.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, festivals, fencing doesn't only have to be fencing. Like we can look at a product and say it can be used for something else. So for the art shows, we use fencing as walls, for the walls. So artists hang their art from the fencing, and we put a 10 by 10 panels in our 10 by 10 tent and pop-up tents, and it makes a great structure for hanging art. And so we do this thing where we know so well, we work so well together. We take the order, we pass it on to Joanna or Joanna's team, and then it comes together, and then our team puts it up, I think, on events. I'm not sure actually who puts it up on site. It's one of our team, one of us do. But it really makes so much sense. Just the other day I had a art show going under a tent. It was like a new, and they were trying to figure out how to hang the art. So I did that, and it went over very well. The artists and the curators were like blown away by how simple a process it was. And I called Modu-Loc. It was a last minute order. Don't ask me why. And they had the product. Our team went up and picked it up, and everything was done perfectly. It's a great, when you get together with other vendors that you can work with and create a community. It really makes working together so much easier. You make calls, and that's actually one of the things. Like what I learned in my catering business when I was a caterer, I used Higgins Event Rentals all the time. For 27 years, I would place them. And people would say, well, why don't you, move around and shop for better prices or whatever? And it's like, it's not, price is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that that you can get, that you're going to get what you ask for, that you have a background, so that there's knowledge, there's experience, and there's a commitment to finding a solution. And I think that's one of the most important things that we have, both with when we work together with Modu-Loc and with our customers too.
Absolutely. And I think the word that you hit there, community, is so important. It's not just a business. It's not just an industry. It really is a community. And I know Debbie has a question. She has her hand raised there, so we'll go over to you.
I have more of a comment because I find that, I've been here for 16 years, and I find that when our newer suppliers come on board, they're always wanting to, and I get it, you're in sales, you want to target festivals, you want to build a relationship, and you want to get an order. But one of the things I always encourage them to do is to get to know the other suppliers, because there is a network. You don't know what you have that you can add to their knowledge, first of all, is really important, but you don't know what connections you're going to make, what can happen. And, this is a prime example of that. I just had to make that comment. So,
yeah,
no,
it's
absolutely
true. It's not always the lowest price. Like you don't always want to go for the lowest price. Sometimes you want to go for something that you can depend on. And, maybe you need to raise the price a little bit of the festival. I go back to when I was at Toronto Taste. When I started, they were charging $65 a head to come into an event that would cost you $500 to put on per person to put on yourself. And we put the price up to $125, and it was sold out as well. And it went well. So I think people need to think about what an event costs to put on, and also think about what they can charge for it, because the lowest price is not always the law. That's some crazy people who I guess were successful, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can be successful. There's equal examples of people who charge a lot and do very well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's I think
not that we charge a lot. That's not what I'm trying to say. We charge fair prices, but like as people selling the end product, it's okay to charge more sometimes.
I'm not sure. I have to Google it, but I think the company that had that as their slogan, it might not be around anymore.
No, they're still around.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it wasn't. But there's a couple comments in the window here. Is like, can't wait for FEO 2022 from Michelle, and Anne also said, thank you, Debbie. Great comment and a reminder to all of us. We are here to support each other in every way we can, which is, I think, a really important and wonderful thing about FEO and about this series. Is that it's really been an opportunity for everyone to get together. And Debbie's done a wonderful job, and Jay as well, producing this series in providing an avenue the same way that, Andrew, your meetings really got your team together. I think this has been a meeting place for the entire festival industry, and something that I know I've personally really needed during this time. And in May, I kind of felt like as a deflated balloon that I didn't know any more air could come out of, but it just kind of kept going out. And if anyone, we are in the last few minutes, so if anyone does have a question, please feel free to pop it in the window. But before we wrap everything up, I do want to ask another question of each of you, and I kind of want to look into the crystal ball a little bit, and like looking forward, what do you think are some trends and some specific things that festival organizers that maybe we didn't talk about today should touch on? And I think, Andrew, you had started to touch on weather, and Joanna, I know as well, from the fencing side as well. If you can talk about maybe something that people really need to be mindful of. So Andrew, we'll start with you this time, and then we'll go over to Joanna.
Well, I do think weather is something you need to really, think about, and insurance for weather. So how are you covered? What happens if something bad happens on set? The other thing I want to mention, last week the Tuesday talk was about an MC, and I thought that was brilliant. Having somebody on site who can control the crowd, tell people what to do. So if you didn't watch that Tuesday talk, I'd go back and watch that. That was really good. The other thing is, I don't know whether it's something that's going to go forward after March, because we don't really know what COVID controls will be. But if you do need COVID controller, or actually if you just need people, because sometimes getting volunteers is not as easy as it might be, you might want to start budgeting that some of the positions that you bring in temporary staff to do some of the jobs. We did the cleaning, and we did the COVID control, or the attendance control on the way into a couple of events in the Southside Shuffle and Paint the Town Red, and both of those were very successful. And it's hard to find people who are going to commit to that much time. So think about, if you do need extra staffing, can you bring it in? Is there an agency out there that can do it? You can call me, and I'd be happy to help, talk to you about methods and so on. But those are the things I think you need to watch about. Can you get enough staff? And what's the weather going to do? And is your insurance coverage enough?
And I think we have some FEO suppliers as well who are really great at helping to move crowds. So there might be some solutions there. But Joanna, we'll go over to you as well.
Sure, yeah. It's funny because as we've been ramping back up and getting back into events, we've seen them handled all different kinds of ways. Like, we've done everything from the drive-through or drive-in format to constructing little pods or corrals so that we can limit group sizes and promote social distancing, all the way to we have had events, to your point about copying and pasting, previous configurations or install plans that were very, very similar to the last way that we've done them. So it's kind of, they've really run the gamut. I think there's definitely an appetite for events to get back just to the way that they were, certainly. But two things I can definitely comment on is our experience with construction. Actually, we've seen theft increase pretty significantly. And it's kind of, I know that events are very different, so it's hard to it's too early to tell if it's going to be a problem that affects events as well. But with the scarcity of materials and supplies affecting the construction industry, we have seen, break-ins and thefts of, things like lumber and copper wire. So really, I think just thinking about ensuring the security of any compounds for, whether it's equipment or supplies, just something to think about. Again, kind of a little bit early to tell whether this is something that will affect the events industry as well, but wanted to mention it. And to Andrew's point about weather, that is something that we've been working through recently as far as updating some of our internal policies. And yes, insurance has been a challenge, certainly. So we're really taking a hard look at this practice of hanging, privacy screen, or banners, really any signage of any kind on unsupported, what we're calling unsupported temporary fence. It is a temporary structure. It's not permanently secured. And just hanging anything on temporary fence like that really increases the risk of it blowing over or tipping over. And I mean, we're talking about panels that weigh 60 to 85 pounds, depending on the size, right? So it's something that we're taking a hard look at. And something that we're really hoping our clients will understand as far as making sure that those panels are properly secured, whether it's with concrete blocks or some sort of an anchoring solution.
Oh, absolutely.
I also think the bannering should be proper. Yeah, we'll have to watch out what you use for bannering. Don't use, solid vinyl to put on a fence, because it's going to blow over. And the other thing sorry, Kyle, one last thing. For festivals, you need to think about things being stolen that you would never think of being stolen before. For example, cooking oil has gone from $15 for a 16-liter pail to $45 or $50 for a 16-liter pail. And don't ask me why, but so like if you have a festival with a lot of food vendors, somebody could come in and just steal all their oil, which it would never happen before, but now it's something you need to think about. So.
Wow, yeah, that's an unusual thing. Is something I wouldn't have thought of, is that the pandemic has changed the value of certain things that now we just need to be even more mindful of watching things that we might not have had to watch before, which is really unexpected.
One of the things I hear from my caterer friends in the States is that the supply chain down there has gone wacko. Like, they have big suppliers like Gordon Food Services and the other big suppliers just calling up people and saying, we're not supplying you anymore. We're not in that market anymore. And, they're having to hustle. So you may find it harder to find like paper goods and foodstuffs and things like that are changing. So it's an interesting new environment we're looking at.
Absolutely. And I think another really important reason to reach out and start the conversation early, and because I've seen it, I saw it outside Ontario last month, where a row of waist-high fencing actually started to blow halfway into the site. It was just an unexpected gust of wind, and it happens. So even discussing what kind of materials for those sponsor banners or artwork, in order to keep everybody safe and festivals running. We are at time, and I don't think there's any other questions. Michelle did say very good point, Joanna. And thank you for this informative session. And I do want to say a very big thank you to Joanna and Andrew for joining us, sharing your insights and sharing your experience, and sharing the hour with us. And I want to thank everyone on the call as well for joining us and spending your time with us. Hopefully it's part of getting the industry back rolling as early as possible, because I think that's what we're all ready and waiting for, is festivals to come back in a big way. I do also want to mention that so next week, Helen Chamiri Russell is from the region of Waterloo. She's going to be on the FEO Tuesday Talk next week when Debbie returns, and we're all very excited to see Debbie back. And again, I want to say a very big thank you to everyone for joining us, and we hope that you will join us next week. Thanks everybody.